Harold, yes, it is indeed. So welcome to the Harold Clurman Poetry Reading Series on Zoom. I hope everyone is muted. We are recording this event. If you do not wish to be filmed, please turn off your video. Please do not use the chat. We will be using the chat for the Q&A, and you can put your questions in the chat and I will read them out. Also in the chat, we've put the links for these wonderful books by our poets, Seeing the Body by Rachel Eliza Griffiths and Redbone by Mahogany Browne, Woke Baby, which my grandchildren adore. And then today, I read to our teenagers from this book. I don't know if you can see it, but it's an extraordinary book, Woke, A Young Poet's Call to Justice. Under the guidance of our artistic director, Tom Oppenheim, we are moving forward like an oncoming train, but gently. Tonight, these poets, Rachel Eliza Griffiths, our 2020 resident poet, and Mahogany Browne will take us away, bring us back, rotate us, and allow the spiral to have a not so soft landing. That's my guess for tonight. A little bit about the Stella Adler Studio Center of the Arts. We are a family of actors from NYU, our day conservatory, the teenage conservatory, along with our Adler Youth program in the newly formed Arts Justice Division, our Black Arts program in partnership with the Billie Holiday Theater in Brooklyn, our evening conservatory, and our LA home, the Art of Acting Studio. Young and older theater artists share our beautiful studio at 65 Broadway and our Zoom links. During non-COVID times, many of us go to Rikers Island, but during the pandemic, we send videos of our classes. We send poems and letters to our students who are still there. We are a leading arts program on Rikers Island. Thank you, Tom Oppenheim, our artistic director, for nurturing and keeping our creative home alive. It hasn't been easy. The Harold Clurman Art Series was created by our visionary artistic director who believes that actors should know about and be good citizens in the world. And to that end, he imagined the Harold Clurman Lecture Series, the David Oppenheim Music Series, MAD, Movement and Dance, our lab theater, and our forum for emerging playwrights, First Breath. We have an equity, diversity, and inclusion artistic director, the wonderful Anita Daschel-Sparks. Thank you to Nina Capelli Oppenheim, our director of cultural programs, who is our watchful eye. Many thanks, many thanks to our production manager, Libby J. Vera. We are bold and brave, sometimes a little dusty, very contemporary. We are a committed clan of human beings who care about truth and beauty, the future, the planet, and the power of art. We believe in the energy of our past, the spirit of Stella Adler and Harold Clurman, and we add to that the stamina and duenda of our students. And now, speaking of the power of art and poetry, please welcome Rachel Eliza Griffiths and Mahogany Browne.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. That was lovely and amazing and felt very theatrical and cinematic. So I believe we're in the right space this evening. And I am certain that this evening with my dear sister, poet Mahogany Browne will be the balm and antidote for whatever might happen later this evening. Right now, I would like to introduce Mahogany. I was asked Joanne, when Joanne asked me who I would like to read with, she was immediately, I could see her smile, I could hear her words, feel her energy, share her laughter immediately. And so I'm so humbled and grateful and thankful that she was able to join us this evening. And Joanne is completely correct when she says that we're in for a feast. I'm going to read her official biography and then say a few more words personally, but I'm really looking forward to your questions. And it feels like a very special evening when you get to read poems with a poet, a woman, a force of nature, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spirit and citizen. When you get to age and grow with that person, it's something you don't take for granted. So I just want to say that first and foremost. Mahogany L. Browne is a writer, organizer, and educator, executive director of Bowery Poetry Club and artistic director of Urban Word, New York City, and poetry coordinator at St. Francis College. Mahogany L. Browne has received fellowships from Agnes Goon, Air Serambi, Cave Canem, Poets House, Mellon Research, and Rauschenberg Foundation. One private note about that is that we were roommates at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. And so, I mean, you can ask us some stories about that, but it was magical. She is the author of Woke, A Young Poet's Call to Justice, Woke Baby, and Black Girl Magic, Kissing Caskets, and Dear Twitter. She is also the founder of the Woke Baby Book Fair, a nationwide diversity literature campaign, and as an Arts for Justice grantee, she is completing her first book of essays on mass incarceration, investigating its impact on women and children. I'm also really happy and encourage you to pre-order Mahogany's debut YA novel, Chlorine Sky, which is an amazing title. It will be published by Crown Books. It's forthcoming in January 2021. Make sure you pre-order it. I ordered mine like months ago and then still need to get like gift copies, hint, hint. Chlorine Sky is about an African-American teen dealing with fractured friendships, first romances, and her own empowering coming of age. What I also would like to just share from a brother poet of ours and a genius, Jason Reynolds, says about Mahogany L. Browne's writing that her story, Chlorine Sky, is a story about heart and backbone, and one only Mahogany L. Browne could bring forth. I just wanted to share, you know, the formal, the real deal, as if you didn't know if you're here tonight. I won't gush too much because I think you need to hear the work, but as I said before I read Mahogany's bio, that I'm just, the easiest words could be thank you, and yet those words are inadequate to fill the love that I have for this woman and her presence in my life, the work that she does. There is no one like Mahogany Browne. She is the Mahogany Browne of our generation. She is singular and extraordinary. And I am absolutely honored to welcome Mahogany Browne to our stage. Thank you. Was I on mute the whole time?
No, you were
Okay.
great.
Okay.
You were great. Thank you so much, Rachel, Eliza. This is my sister. We met at Cave Canem, and I was saying, don't say anything about Rauschenberg. It was like a utopia that that was for just those, you know, 9 artists that were there, but that was my housemate, which was, it was the universe giving us both what we needed. I am always in search of sister friends and sistership, but you don't have to search far for that kind of connection with Rachel Eliza, and I'm just so grateful to be here to celebrate her brilliance. Stella Adler Studio, you did a great job. She's the poet residence of my heart, so I'm excited to do this reading today. I want to open with a cento with the guidance of Polly Murray, and then I will read a poem one of my favorite poems by Rachel Eliza. Reverse Cento, with the guidance of Polly Murray. I am weary, O God. I am a prophet without eyes to see. The man laughed a golden laughter, shouted and sand danced up and down as do all free things, finding themselves free. Pity the poor who hate. Brown girl chanting, rust-colored peasant, bronze girl wielding ship hulls, queen of ghetto, children of courage, the nameless millions, native and migrant. Take a black's manhood, give a white God. He twists, he spins, he claws at the sun. Brown men think and feel, are hurt and broken. Hail as you must. A tractored and turbines world. Let men turn face outward to the sky. I am the spine of the earth in the curved stem of an apple. Sometimes the birds and flowers fill my path with song and bloom. Defiant tree, the dream of slaves and beggars and songs of dead ports haunted me all day. Call it neither love nor spring madness. Be without a name. I am at peace. I am at peace. I am peace. Earth has her need of rain and I of tears. Words tiptoeing from mouth to ear, I have listened, and thousands move together. A new dream and a new world for dreaming. What better person to open up this section I'm going to be reading today as we prepare for night one of debates. I feel like you came to the best place for the balm that you're going to need to get through that madness, right? So thank you for your foresight. This book, have you bought it? If not, do so. If you have bought it, buy another one. I'm going to read Another Age, Last Dance of Suicide by Rachel Eliza Griffiths. This is the last day you will ever see me want to die. Today is the last time I will consider a bridge, a bullet, a train, or leather belt, a bottle of winter. Let this be the last day sorrow will lend me her black dress with its high side slit and tell me I am nothing but jazz, smoke, and sequin. Let this be the last day I'll kiss sorrow with my tongue and promise her I've never cheated. I glittered and glittered while she wasn't looking. I couldn't help it. How did you sweet talk your shotgun into my mouth? Coming into my house each night on your blue knees, crying, baby, 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 like you knew me by a natural name. How can a fool survive a fool? This is some new song of leather. These is bloody shoes. I'll dance on my grave, but never sleep there. And your lonely music. You heard me begging for our song to stop. Now, dear death, I own my masters and my slaves. The rights I've earned by blood and bruise. The only blues is that I've left you for good. How did I think I could speak of love for myself while you cut the tongues out of my own poems? Yes, God, yes, of course, my life is mine, but who owns this singing if not love? Let every scar welcome me as I fly through the door of my flesh. Beware, suicide. Whoever says you and I are each other's business. That girl can write. Let me tell you something. Did you feel a goosebump? I did, all right? And I read it. I was goosebumping while I read her poems. So praise you, Rachel Eliza. I love you. I'm going to do 3 pieces total of my own, and then I'm going to bring Rachel to the stage, to our virtual stage. I wrote this piece commissioned by the National Black Theater in Harlem, and the theme is unbought and unbossed. Can y'all remember who that is? You should. That's some Shirley Chisholm right there. And in this day and time, this moment right now, we need her more than ever. We need her spirit. We need her guidance. And I am reading this: My Right to Voice, My Right to Vote. The day my great-grandmother uttered no, removed the reins of the mule from my grandmother's hands and demanded she follow her palm sweat into the balm of the little shack's lavender. My great-grandfather, left to toil his crop on his own, kissed his teeth the entire time at the knowing heft of a woman's decision. The day my great-grandmother uttered no, she relinquished my grandmother's dreams into a constellation that would one day birth my father and his 7 siblings. She gave my grandmother permission to perfect the trek from Berkeley to Golden Gate Fields, in time to bet and win a legion of triple doubles and trifectas that would one day pay for the mortgage and deed of land gleaming like a gold tooth in the middle of West Oakland. She prayed for my grandmother the foresight to be both pillar and pulpit for me, her firstborn granddaughter, to a father, her son, who would look at me curiously and pray for the heir I would never become. I knew then, as all omens must, this broken structure, this house of lonely glass, is simply kindling for my kind. What is duty to a woman born with a taste for vengeance? There is no other way to become than to undo the most heinous foul from our bones, burn its fur, and watch its smoke signal in the air, watch it call the other women to safety, watch it become a polling place, a formidable home. Here is a place to brew ideas. Here is a place to unshield. Armor is heavy no matter the shoulders, but have you witnessed the brilliance of woman? She excels even when the patriarchy tries to eat her spirit for lunch. Have you ever been saved by the grace of a woman? The way she considers and breaks open the husk of a coconut to feed all within her reach, nourish the body and the mind with her teachings. She is a warrior, fighting collectively for 100 years, but protecting the young centuries before. She's learned, if a silencing occurs, her step heavy in the light towards equality will quake the picket line. Initially, suffrage didn't include Black women, but watch us double as cross and bow, buried in ritual. The mule no longer needed in the toiling of soil. She will plant sunflowers and birth a new skyline. Can you imagine? A world where we grow into the discomfort. It is a signal of growth. Our collective voices stretching root-like into the core of who we must become if we are to survive. Patriarchy is a lie, but if you are ready to relish in this bounty of a beautiful capacity of love and respect, you can learn from a woman's vote. You can lean into the direction of a woman's voice. On the 19th day of any day, we are still swinging against erasure because she is worth remembering. We are worth remembering. Ghost of a ballad, harlot and spoonkin, bemoan witchery, moon chaser, shadow enemy. How else can we predict this kind of sprawling? We live here now, where women walk next to their loves, where women don't go missing, where women learn to call themselves by new names, names that fit into their fists like heartstones. Put it close to your ear. Can you hear it? I am here to burn it all down. And if you notice, the 19th Amendment, this is our 100-year anniversary. So shout out to that, especially in a time when we need to be fighting ever so vigilantly, right? We have to feverishly, ferociously, whatever alliteration you need to make you feel like, how do I volunteer at the polling place? Do I vote early? All of that, do that, please. We need to assure that we keep certain things together, like the right to vote. Women have the right to vote. Someone got mad, honey. I don't know what is going on these days. What my grandmother would say is, your slip is showing. And every time I listen to the rhetoric, I think, oh, your slip is showing. Like, you are so scared. I would be scared too. If you are reading the literature written by the Audre Lordes and the June Jordans and the Sonia Sanchez and the Rachel Eliza Griffiths and then you know the blueprint to freedom is there. The liberation is already waiting for us. And so if you are against that kind of idea, that kind of freedom, then yeah, I'd be scared too. So I want to read one poem from Woke. Thank you so much, Joanne, for bringing my little baby to the forefront. This is my really my second kids book, and it's an anthology featuring Elizabeth Acevedo and Olivia Gatwood. It's for grades or ages 8 and up. But the idea is that we're talking about these very large social justice themes for young people. I do truly believe that if we were talking about empathy and forgiveness and volunteerism and allyship and body positivity and community to the people who are in our Congress, in these political offices, it wouldn't be so hard to have conversations about transformative justice and equity and equality. They don't have the building blocks, right? So this book exists now. We're gonna make sure it gets into all schools so we don't have to keep trying to recreate the wheel. And I'll read about silencing very quickly, and then I'll close with the piece that I just wrote. The Poet's Pen. Oh, and all of the pictures are by Theodore Taylor III. What does the silence of a people sound like? Maybe the silence you hold in your chest, the silence before a body falls to the ground, the silence after a cry pierces the air, the silence when listening for a newborn's breath. Or does it sound like an orchid growing toward the sun? Does it sound like a moon moving across the crashing waters? Does it sound like a poet in the poet's pen, moving against the paper, speaking stories about their home city and a single mother's song? Moving against the paper, speaking stories about farming and a father's well wishes or a graduation ceremony. Moving against the paper, speaking stories about bicycle spokes and trading cards, clicking hello to passersby. A silence can sound like many things. That is why we choose to write poems as a people's almanac for those unable to speak. So yeah, thinking about those large ideas when talking to young people, and hoping that we give them these necessary building blocks as they grow into their rightful role as global citizens. This will be my last piece. I had the honor of interviewing Breonna Taylor's mother, Tamika, and one of the quotes that stuck out the most, we talked about the joy of her daughter and what her daughter meant to their community, and I asked, what is one thing that you remember that she would say? And she said, Breonna always said to her friends, if you want something, apply pressure. And I thought, oh, so she was a revolutionary, of course. Of course she said apply pressure. Of course, what you don't do is like, you just accept injustice. You have to, forge ahead. And so this is my final piece, and it's called Apply Pressure, Breonna Taylor. Breonna is gone. Eleanor is gone. We the people read the names and only recognize the flames of injustice. Syllable count heat close enough to the neck. Fred is gone. Ruth is gone. The people utter their names during protest, during prayer, during wake and repose. Louisville and Mississippi and Detroit and Chicago, your streets are still slick with the blood of our endangered citizens. Mike is gone. Kiana is gone. Who else got time to sage the polls and the political office? Evil is alive and only answers to the tune of money. Indifference is a tsunami thrashing against our chests. George and Eric and Trayvon, Florida and Milwaukee. Oh, America. We did not resist your attempts to murder us on a plantation, just to be murdered on a plantation. California and Georgia, can't you see? We ain't leaving the land we toiled. We ain't leaving our voice you attempted to spoil. We don't believe in your president. We refuse to submit. We are parents and formerly incarcerated. We are queer and public defenders. We are educators and entrepreneurs. We are the vote. We commit to freedom. Our spirits have fled from the fire for so long, we liken the heat to cornbread in debates over the Supreme Court and the remote control. Our vastness is undisputable. Our ability to joy and woe and rage and love, all tangible, all present, all possible. How else we gonna feed these babies? We will teach them to know themselves despite your disregard. Our children will not fear their own shadows. Our children will not fear the reflection from the white gaze. Our children will focus on their own ways of brilliance, and we will continue to stoke the flames, burn down the monuments, burn down the bigotry, burn down the pedestal that lifts up your fragility. We have never tried to hide from this history. We have never demanded more than we're owed. You can run, but you can't outrun this destiny. Our ancestors already vowed, riding low beneath the water's tides, or inside the hull of this nation's nightmare, we will never be gone again. Thank you so much for letting me read and letting me share. And I will read the bio of Rachel Eliza Griffiths, who's going to read next. And buckle up, go ahead and hydrate yourselves, because she's the one, okay? Rachel Eliza Griffiths is the author of 4 previous collections of poetry, including Lighting the Shadow. Her literary and visual work has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Paris Review, and many other publications. She lives in New York City. But what is not written here is that she is a Renaissance woman. She is a photographer. She is an educator. She is a sister. She is a friend. I am so, so honored to welcome to the stage, to share space always with Rachel Eliza Griffiths.
Mahogany, thank you so much. Stella Adler, Joanne, everyone who's listening. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you and to share some words and to share spirit and to hold space with each other. It seems to me to be able to gather in the space of language gets us closer to speaking truths that we need to say and truths that we need to listen to. The first poem I'd like to read to you is the title poem of my new collection. I like calling it a hybrid because that feels like me. So it's poetry and photographs. This poem is called Seeing the Body. She died, and in the spring of her blood, I remember my mother's first injury. Surprise of unborn petals curling red, then dark around her wrist. Some fruit she cut, some onion, some body with skin and sharp seeds. She fed me. She lived us and I. She held we and I. She kept speaking with those flowers falling from her blood, taking her across the sky to death. I remember her voice like a horn I never want to pull out of my heart. In the next life, which is here and here, I gather every mouth that ever sang my mother's blues. She burned and she talked back hard at God. Oh, my mother, she danced unbroken too. Veil of grief on my back, opening into something black I wear. A life of flesh like a fruit or petal or burning. I've carried everything, and I'm tired. My mother survived, and but she did not live. She told me nothing, and she was waiting the entire time. How does the elegy believe me? Together, we crossed the sky. There was a gate, and we walked through the world like that. She wrote we and I. She was last or never seen, and brown eyes without life, opened her eternity when the air in her stopped, and she was last seen dying. She was too silent for the first time in her life. The spring of my mother's blood, hot, and God, the dark, dark beyond the closed door that won't move again. So seeing the body, the collection, the spine of it is about my mother's death in 2014. And while the death is part of the spine, I think the larger part of the body is the transformation, the geography that gets realigned when you come through love and holding on to it in spite of and because of. This poem is called Belief, and I don't think I need to tell you anything about it. I think and hope that I guess I want to read this poem for my uncle Ronald, who died from COVID-19 in July. Belief. I'd come into the room and try to write a different ending on those anonymous walls. There was less time all the time until time changed. You know what I mean. You stare at the clock, the vomit-hued walls, that hush dripping in your head until you feel you have never been elsewhere. Your world is a sigh from the bed, a moan, another request for ice chips, water, some news, any news from the doctor, water again. Where is the doctor? I tried to read and write. Over and over, I arranged plain little soaps, toothbrush, and comb. From home, I brought her own things, hairbrush, Dove, and Revlon lipstick, dolled our darling up, washed her weary face, hair twisted into a ballerina bun, used the pink lotion the way I was taught, rubbed chemi oil along her scalp while she purred, yes, yes, thank you, Rachel face. Smoothed thick cream and pulled compression socks on bony feet we once teased her about. My brother gave Evan, the funeral director, a blanket to keep my mother's feet warm, while I fretted about the type of shoes our mother should wear inside of her casket. But before I accepted her dying, which would be true 5 months later, I kept trying to write my mother a strong beginning. We slept on the floor of the waiting room. We drank coffee and ate out of foil or boxes. We took shifts stepping in and out of hell. We never abandoned her. We went out and walked around Jefferson Hospital looking for the right food to put some weight on her smile. Her body was the only home I've ever cared about. I watched red and green lines on screens, wrote out notes and dosages, walked down freakish hallways after midnights, bodies at unrest, bodies snoring, groaning, farting, cursing, screaming, and sighing in yellow tunnels, blank, and courteous, my uninsurable mind would come back to the same idea. My mother is going to live because she is just going to live. And you know, I would begin the list again, revising the mercy of the God I knew. I dreamt in the hideous chapel, prayers drying desperately on my lips. I'd rub balm against my mother's mouth, hold the straw while she barely sipped, shaking her girlish head if the water wasn't cold enough. Then the pain gripped us too, and the irritated drip beneath her quiet voice. I would speak to her, look into brown eyes that I now see whenever I look into rain. Sometimes I'd hum alone in the middle of the night. I didn't know who I was trying to save anymore. My mother was so close to us, I could almost reach her bad heart. The tired organs stalling in her body. I believed and believed and believed. I believed if I took more care with her life, there would be a God who cared more than the God who did not think about our bodies, about the divine grief of daughters, about my mother, or the ache in these stanzas, these two thin veins that still river our lives in blood. And I think as I'm reading this poem and thinking of so many loved ones who are trying to process their grief and the lack of dignity that their relatives are having, dying from COVID, not being able to touch or hold a loved one, to be there and support, it's just this aching that goes through me all the time, and it hurts. And I don't even think now, oh, we'll look back because we'll still have this with us because we're all carrying it. And our bodies carry these memories and histories and stories. So I would like to read a poem to you called Whipping Tree, and it's a different form of what I've just mentioned. And the story that I can tell you about it, it's called Whipping Tree. Maybe 2 years ago now, I was in Savannah, Georgia with another poet sister, Tracy K. Smith. I was along in my photographer mode more than anything, as part of a libretto that she is producing called Castor and Patience, and I'm the image designer for that. And so I was learning all these things about opera and also Geechee Gullah community down off of Hilton Head and in Savannah. And so on our tour, we were taken to this very old cemetery that contained whipping trees. Whipping trees, the ones that were shown to me, are actual literal trees. And again, this makes me think about the huge climate crisis we're in. It's not even over, the thing that Faulkner says. It's like the whipping tree is now. I mean, the fires, everything, it's now, it was then, and here we are. The whipping trees bear the actual gouging made from whips that masters used on slaves to discipline and punish them, and to show the other slaves what could be done to them if they were to resist. And so you literally can go and see these trees and see the proof of the kind of life that Black people, brown people, indigenous people had to manage, and also racism against the environment. Like it's like geo-racism. Fortunately, the marks on many of the whipping trees, because the trees were so young, they've grown. And I think in another few years, we won't be able to touch those scars. And I think that would be a profound thing. This is Whipping Tree. Laurel Grove Cemetery, South Savannah, Georgia, 2018. Where are the whips and hands that risked their own history to lash lessons of blood upon Black bodies roped against these simple oaks? The marks are too high to touch now. the evidence too grotesque to scab our wailing eyes. I am trying to translate a word that glows like a chain. It is nearly God. The thick trees have grown tall beyond their unbearable childhoods. In the tree, I see which way the master snapped his wrist, turned directions, changing his mind when the body didn't scream loud enough, when the eyes of the slave refused to look away from the master she once nursed. Were there days he tired from bringing the whip across his thin freedom, and did he throw his ugly work to another man as he walked tenderly to a house he dared to call his home? The South stands in the throat of a tree. Truth is a scraped breath between glorious brown limbs. How hard was it for them to gather their blistered family into gentle arms and keep singing to Jesus? I want what flesh they hymned, every flap of skin crying and glowing red in faith. I can't look away from these unbroken trees. I am aware that we are living in the middle ring of terrorism, the trouble of scars bleeding through new maps, the tree trying alone to survive our dead names in the stripped bark. So I'm going to turn the song in a different direction, because when I think of Mahogany, I think of joy, Black joy, infinite. I think of two steps and late nights and sunny mornings and all those good things, water, dolphins, starlight. And so I'm going to read a different poem. I'm going to read an Obad, which is a kind of morning poem, a lighter poem, because I want to leave you with some light, because that's the thing with shadows, that they need light. So this is called Obad to Langston. And the Langston, of course, is Mr. Langston Hughes. And this is for all of us, really. Obad to Langston. When the light wakes and finds again the music of brooms in Mexico, when daylight pulls our hands from grief and hearts cleaned raw with sawdust and salt water flood their dazzling vessels, when the catfish in the river raise their eyelids towards your face, when sweet grass bends in waves across battlefields where sweat and sugar marry, when we hear our people wearing tongues fine with plain greeting, how you doing? Good morning. When I pour coffee and remember my mother's love of buttered grits, when the trains far away in memory begin to turn their engines towards a deep past of knowing, when all I want to do is burn my mask, when I see a woman walking down the street holding her mind like a leather belt, when I pluck a blues note for my lazy shadow and cast its soul from my page, when I see God's eyes looking up at Black folks flying between moonlight and museum, when I see a good-looking people who are my truest poetry, when I pick up this pencil like a flute and blow myself away from my death, I listen to you again, Langston, beneath the mercy of a blue morning's grammar. Thank you. And then I will close on one last poem, which is called Good Mother. Find the page. And so I'm reading this poem, another poem, Joyful, because there were so many things about grief that one could write about, but then too, like joy and celebration and stories and the kind of like iridescent stories that can happen in a space of darkness or a tunnel. There's this like glimmering that happens. And I wanted to remember that and think about that and hold that too. And so this poem is called Good Mother. And I also want to thank David Lehman and Paisley Rechdel. They chose this poem. It's in the Best American 2020. It's my first time being included there, which feels really special. And so this poem is called Good Mother. And then I hope we can talk and ask questions and listen to each other. Good mother. Praise the woman who took me in her arms and wouldn't let go of me. We sank to the floor in the middle of the aisle in Rite Aid. It was a late morning, and I walked slowly, furious that spring could still be so wonderful. Magnolia tempted me to forget about my mother. For a few minutes, I stared at a Brooklyn blue sky through branches clasping pear blossoms. The limbs shook in sunlight. My eyes adjusted when I went into the pharmacy and realized everywhere I looked, the world announced it would soon be Mother's Day. Something ripped itself out of me, a howl so wide I thought I would burst. The woman near the counter understood right away, the way my mother once understood I had been born in a specific sadness. The woman did not say she was a mother, but I knew it. She put her arms around me and waved away the cashiers, the security guard who repeated, "Ma'am, ma'am." A stranger rocked me in her arms, so much kindness as we fell over and crashed against a row of votive candles. She didn't say it would be okay. She didn't ask me what was wrong, but her arms put me in a vicious prayer. I almost bit her, almost pushed her away. We held on. We held on and praised the nameless thing that makes us what we think we aren't strong enough to know. She knew. She didn't let go of me. Praise the woman who didn't wipe my snot from her shirt, my tears from her collarbone, who did not tell me to pull myself together while everything inside me dropped. Crushed bones, blossoms pushing through my mouth, a word, mom, mom, mom. This broken bird song of mine with no bird, no wing, no way to fly back through time. Praise the woman who did not leave me like something suddenly dead with a breeze flying over its face on the sidewalk. Praise the woman who smelled like fabric softener and coffee and the good things I must believe I am too. Praise the mothers who walk slowly through the world, bringing children into themselves, burying children sometimes before themselves, and who defend something harder than innocence. Praise the guts and grace of mothers. Praise their exhaustion and their good work. Praise their wit, their wonderful ways of listening to the world fall asleep against its clean pillow. For the woman who knelt with me in an ugly heap in the middle of Rite Aid on an unbearable spring day, who helped me buy a Mother's Day card for my dead mother, who knew better than to say I'd be just fine. For you, I lift my arms each spring and wish you a kindness so fantastic, I sometimes feel I'm in midair, the shadow of my wings, clapping in joy above your children who must love you. Thank you so much.
Woo, child. I love you. Praise Rachel Eliza Griffiths and that pen, honey.
I love you too. How are you?
Oh my goodness, where would we be without you? Where would we be?
With us. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for this.
So how does the Q&A work? Do I just ask you questions? Because I just want to know how to get my life in order.
Why don't we start like this? If the two of you ask each other questions, and then everyone else, you post your questions in the chat, and I will read them out.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I have a question that I've already written down. Your ability to tether the past, the present, the grief, the familial, light, joy, all masterful. How did you put this book together with all those many tendrils so tightly wound?
Thank you. I wish I had like a map to say. And that's what it feels like. It feels like a map. It feels like a lot of it is the unconscious. It's the intuition and the instinct. I think with the loss of a mother, for me, at first I was like, I'm not going to write the poem or the book about my dead mother. I'm just not going to go there. And so I had a lot of resistance beginning the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was also making these photographs right before her death. And then I deliberately made some after she passed away of trying to like ground myself in the world and like kind of the map, the geography. So there's like desert, water, rock, stone, wood. It's all very basic kind of textures and tactiles. And that feeling that you can kind of disappear from yourself in the absence of another, in that chasm and in that grief.
Mm.
And so I feel like it was almost very lyrical, like a fragment here, a riff there. And I started to kind of put these things together. And it felt more and more like one breath and then the next. And after a while, I thought, well, maybe there's something happening here. And what I did like was that I could see her again and be really close to her.
Mm-hmm.
And feel her energy. And then I thought, oh, it doesn't have to be about her just being gone. It's about who she was when she was here, who I was when she was here, who I am now. So all of these things kind of came together, and then the world is happening to you, right? So 7 days after my mother died, Mike Browne was shot in Ferguson, you know? So, you know, all of these things are happening as, you know, you have this private grief, but then there's like the public and the national grief and rage that's happening too. And so all of that was kind of going into the book as well, you know. I didn't read any of the poems tonight about, you know, Emmett Till, but, you know, I went to Money, Mississippi. I wanted to have my own muscle memory of going to the place where Till last lived, you know. I wanted to kind of go back through these different places in America, how they happen privately in me, but then also how they happen beyond me. And so I mean, this is probably the book that took me the longest to write. I feel like I got a lot of gray hair and maybe lost a year or two off my life, but I'm okay with that. It was worth it. But I like the balance of joy in it too, of like really, you know, when you're writing when someone's gone, it's like, you know, I wanted her to be her and not be, you know, the mom who has died. And so that felt like true to me.
Yeah. I love how full-bodied she is, how it felt very honest that you weren't just, you know, mom is perfect and had the best eyes. You were like, she didn't suffer no fools, and she really didn't care what your problem was, right? I love that you just let her be a whole being, and you shared that love with us. And I also think for me, seeing all those nature photos, like at one point I sent you the picture, I was like holding the book on my legs, and I was like, oh my God, my legs are the earth and I'm a mother. And listen, if I wasn't drinking as much gin as I was before I typed to you, I was like, I would have thought I was really prolific. But no, it's really you. It's you that is that prolific. So thank you for connecting, you know, those very fine veiled tissues to show that mother is the body, is the actual mother, is the earth. And I can't wait to hear what happens, because I know like the poems that you wrote when traveling to those spaces are not necessarily the essays and the pictures that you chose to put in this book. So I'm excited to see how those manifest later.
Well, I wanted to say, as you were speaking about the photographs, and I was saying, I believe to Joanne earlier, that you are probably the poet, the woman I have photographed most in my life as a photographer. And so I couldn't let this evening go by without mentioning that, actually singing that, to you, because in you, I just see all the brightness, all the strength, all the just everything. Like since I met this woman, y'all, let me remember everybody else is here before I start crying. So, when I met this woman, I was smitten, and I was just like, you find sisters in your life and everything just popping, just joy, but also power. And I just recognized this kindred energy of, if we want to talk about Renaissance women too, is there nothing Mahogany Browne cannot do? She will get in her car, she will drive, she will do everything. And she, over the years watching you, like, I feel Toni Morrison's energy, like, write the books you want to read, start the press to publish the work. I'm also like the James Brown, like, open up the door and I'll get it myself. Like, I will just make it and do it, and not, I think we are women who have not waited for permission, who have gone forward and said, this is missing and we're going to make it. We need this community. We need to be full citizens to ourselves as women, but also as creators, as citizens, and as inventors. And I mean, just that creation, that vibe, and just your perspective. Sometimes there were so many moments, I will tell you all, when we were roomies at the Robert Rauschenberg residency down in Captiva, where, I mean, I thought, like, if anybody was sitting in this house, it's like Zen energy here over like spades, it's just
over spades and fried chicken and
fried
coffee.
chicken. Yeah. But it was just these things that you would say, and it would be so startling, like, everything you do is right, or just taking care of ourselves too. Like, we really were mindful of taking care of ourselves, eating our greens, drinking water, going to bed, dancing when we needed to, but also being on that page and doing that work. It was a gift to see Mahogany, her room, her space, just her mind at work, brilliant, the pages, you're just like, this is a whole world right here. And now, I mean, we have so many stories. I mean, it's like 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
We're
gonna have
OGs.
our own network special soon. Don't you worry.
I know. I could do a whole photography.
You're gonna have to come back. Don't you see a round table? I see a round table in your future. We love to do that. But I would like to ask you a question, both of you, and then there are some questions coming in here. Okay. And that is, so Rachel, Eliza, what drew you as a poet and a visual artist to then write a novel? And then for Mahogany, who has just left, can you hear me? What drew you as a spoken word poet to write children's books and YA?
So I think I'll say very briefly, because I'm really interested in hearing what Mahogany has to say. I always wrote fiction. I think it just needed a longer lifeline in me. When I did my MFA, I studied fiction, but even long before that, when I was a girl, I always painted, wrote, and it's more like the container or the architecture or the format that you choose with the material, the story you're trying to tell. And so it took me 10 years to begin to feel like I had enough experience in my life to write a novel that I had something to say. And so it was like in a field, and I had to do these other things, but it feels very nonlinear to me because I was always thinking about it, thinking about the story, thinking about the characters and things. And I think that happens with me. It's like just the energy, it can be happening simultaneously, but not more like decisive. I feel more fortunate, like it chose me versus like, I'm gonna do this, like I have control. I have some control, but the work comes towards you. Mahogany, what about you?
As a performance poet, I thought that my language was too harsh to write children's books. I come to poetry in these like nightlife spaces, turned into conference and college spaces. And so I wasn't certain that I was prepared for such tender language. I thought that it would be diluted and then whack. And so Woke Baby
Yep.
was my first attempt, even though Black Girl Magic was my first children's book. It's not a children's book. It's a book that it's an illustrated poem
Mhm.
of a poem that I wrote for women, for grown women, specifically for the mothers of victims of police violence. So the mothers of the slain. I was going to these rallies and these spaces, and I just wanted to offer some space for reclamation and joy. That moment where you're just like, I see you standing there in the midst of your grief, but still there for all of these people to, you know, to tether themselves to, so they can know what a movement looks like. That said, I wasn't prepared for it at all. And Woke was probably the harder one to write. Woke Baby was fairly surprising, but easy, because I wrote to the baby that I rarely get to see on the page. And that's why that book has that little brown baby's face.
Beautiful.
And I love that book so much, especially because it was added to the red flag list. And there were these really nasty comments that found their way to me saying that it was a book for liberals and it taught babies to be liberals. I was like, okay. So now I'm like, everybody buy the book, because if this is the thing that makes that kind of person scared, then that is the closest thing to truth as possible, so that I'm on the right path.
I think we're about to see a lot of college-age students carrying this book around. I'm trying,
Yes.
because I'm a grandmother and I read a lot of children's books, I'm encouraging our students to read children's books,
Yes.
particularly. I have an offer to make to everyone, and that because tonight is reminding me so much of the extraordinary essay by Audre Lorde, Poetry is Not a Luxury. You all have my email address. Email me, I will send it to you. We have a question here, and time is ticking, so here we go. To both Mahogany and Rachel Eliza, when creating your work, does the duenda sometimes show up and you're able to flow out the words naturally from brain to pen that are from creation to publication, one fluid thought? Or is there always a good amount of editing involved, stanzas coming to you in bursts and are edited? Or is there a good amount of both? We talk a lot about duenda at the studio.
Okay. Oh, you mean like duende?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, well, I mean, when I read Rachel's work, I'd say yes. It feels like a constant prayer. I personally edit after I get the ideas out. I try to get all of the emotions and the story out before editing, because I've learned that trying to edit while writing, it stifles the voice, and I end up thinking about what others want me to write, or thinking about how it will look in this journal if this and it's not honest to what the poem needs. Colleen McElroy in our Cave Canem class, she said, you have to make sure that the poet doesn't get in the way of the poem. And I never forgot that. So I try to honor the duende as much as possible, honey. Stay out the way.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, I just, I try more and more to let it be messy and not to split it up. Like there's a point, and I think I'll share words that I share with others that I learned from the amazing poet Joy Harjo. So a few years ago, I was teaching at the Low Residency at the Institute of American Indian Arts. IAIA, and Joy had come to do a lecture, and she spoke about the heart and the mind. And I think this is like, she's written about this as well. And she says, like, first she lets the heart kind of go into this room, and the heart gets to like scream, laugh, throw paint on the wall, break its own heart, fall out, and just kind of be completely wild. But what the heart must do is invite the mind to join it and come into the room and look at the paint on the wall, look at the scratches, look at the broken glass, look at the dented furniture, and to make it, you know, legible, to make it, to translate it. And so if you only have the heart in the room and you don't invite the mind in, then you have this kind of emotional torrent, but there's no, you know, there's no mind, there's no craft, there's no polishing, there's no work. There's the kind of carpentry where you're like sanding and polishing and sculpting, you know, it's on the wheel. If you only have the mind come into the room and lock the heart out, then you have a very smart, clever poem where everyone can see you're smart, but the poem doesn't wake you up in the middle of the night. The poem doesn't save your life, you know? And so I think for me, I agree with Mahogany, you know, about what Colleen said of like not getting in your own way. And I like to flow and just try. Part of the flow for me is the part I love to revise. I love to think and stretch out a word, put it in, take it out, draft after draft. The patience to sit for years with the poem and think it's not ready yet. I'm not going to let it go yet. Even though I have a solicitation here, this isn't going out anywhere until I've spent the time I know I need to on it. And so, you know, I think the minute one tries to even put architecture around Duende resists that. So,
what's the longest amount of time has it taken you to edit a piece?
Maybe like 8-9 years.
Okay, I have a great question here from a former student, former and current student who just gave a brilliant speech at the recent Senate hearing. Lizette Bemanga. As a former kindergarten teacher who always wanted to be real and to have difficult conversations with my students, are you planning on writing children's books, this is for Mahogany, to address the current climate?
That is not a present plan. I have a whole bunch of ideas. One is about like urban gardening, and climate change is on there, but there are also books that exist already. There's this beautiful book. Gosh, I forgot this brother's name. Ricardo. He just did a collaboration with Jamaica Kincaid.
Not Ricardo, Rowan Ricardo Phillips?
No, but I'll send it to I'll email you, and
okay,
you can share it with share it with the squad. So there are books out there that exist right now. Do I want to? I would love to. I just don't know where that will fit in just yet. In the world, in my world of writing. Thank you.
I have one more question to both from a first year student, wonderful student, to both. What do you do to take you out of places where even your art and passions seem to deter you from the joys of life, and sometimes even the joy of shared creations? What do you do? Asaru. How do you bring yourself back to balance? You're in the middle of the duende and everything is coursing out, but then you have to go and do the laundry. How do you get yourself out of that and into life?
Okay. I mean, that residency we did, that was the first time I've ever just been wrapped up in work, ever. I have a 22-year-old daughter. and I work as a teaching artist in the DOE here in New York for the last 13 years maybe. And then of course I had grad school and all this, so I never just had time to sit with my work, and Kaveh was as close as I could get to it, where you had that week. But even then, there's a timeline. So the Rauschenberg was the first time I've ever experienced the ability to just be wrapped up in the work and not unplug. So I've always been the latter, been the one that's like, all right, I can write for like 10 minutes. I can write for an hour. I'll write in the car. I'll write on the train. I really follow Lucille Clifton's quote when she says, you know, how did you keep writing poems after you had kids? She said the poems just got shorter. Like you respond to the time that you're given because life doesn't stop. And obviously your art is a part of your life. So how do you make sure your art doesn't stop?
Yeah.
So there is no balance. There just is.
Rachel, Eliza, do you want to add to that? And that is our last question. But Rachel,
that's a good question.
That was a good question, really.
Okay.
I had to think about it. I was like, what do I do?
I know. There was silence out there. And then I thought, well, now I have to think about it. I was just hoping to read, and then it's your problem.
I mean, I think it's a really great question. For me, you know, it would sound like almost kind of weird to say, but like, I'm never bored. It's about mindfulness and attention for me. You know, I meditate at least twice a day, in the morning and the evening, even if it's a 2 or 3 minute meditation. It's grown now where it's a bit longer. But even if I'm like sitting if I'm in the kitchen chopping up vegetables for dinner or different things, the muscle that is happening unconsciously, like your intuition, it's still working. Even when I'm not working on my novel, I'm still working on my novel. That's right. I trust that process. Like if I go for a walk, if I go see friends, you know, I am someone who believes I have to show up every day. I don't, you know, and how that being present happens is however it happens. It's not static, it's very fluid. So I really like to flow. Sometimes when it's not working, try something else. Or I love other arts. Like I'm very kind of cross-pollinator hybrid person. So listen to music, listen to jazz, watch films, feed that muscle. Like you can't just sit down and think if you're not working it, that it's just you're going to just have some work in front of you. That's not, it'll just be dry and a broke muscle looking at you like, I don't have anything for you. So
I gotta be dry.
Ashy muscle. But you have to really resist putting it off and thinking I'll do that later. And then that's what you'll get is later work. It's just not going to happen. And so, you know, for me, you know, I do, in a different world, I went on residencies and things. I think also because I also have the mind of a visual artist, I can just structure things and move things around in a different way where I can be pretty organized and messy at the same time. I also will follow, you know, my guts. Like if the writing is really doing something, I have to stay with that, even if I want to paint, even if I want to work on recording something, like I'll follow that. And so I think it's just that attention and energy where, you know, even if I'm on the phone talking to Mahogany or someone, that's the one day right there, because something might happen in that conversation that we might not even say, but later it'll come away. I'll be walking down the street to go get groceries or get my laundry, and I'll see a woman or a man or a shadow on the sidewalk, and it'll do something to me. I mean, being in New York right now, the way New York looks, I mean, there's so much. So you could just go outside and look, and you have a whole book drop out from the sky on your lap about New York and pandemic right now and elsewhere, and in your own life, you know? So for me, it's about kind of like having that activated as much as possible so that then I don't make the barrier of being overwhelmed or intimidated when it happens to me, and that I can meet it. Like I can go toward it with excitement, enthusiasm, and also like discipline, because I want that feeling. When you come out of making something, you all, whether it's the theater, dance, writing, whatever, a book, a poem, you come out of that and you went somewhere, there's nothing like that feeling. And so, you know, how can you keep that going? It's good for your health. It's good for everybody.
Yeah.
It's good for our health.
Everyone.
So I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank these two extraordinary women for reading their work, talking to us. We'll have to do a follow-up, but let's end with the quote by Susan Laurie Parks. When she's stuck, she dances. All right, everybody. Mwah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Email
Thanks,
me.
guys.
I'll send you the essay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I
Thank
just want
you
to see
so
everybody's
much.
faces. Oh, yay.
Jen Benka, thank you for coming.
Oh my God, Jen.
Jen
Aw.
Benka is here.
Wait,
Jen
God.
Benka is in the
Yes.
house.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
Betsy Parrish is here.
Oh my God.
Life is good.
Oh,
Thank you, everyone.
And Lizette Bemenga.
Oh, it's
There she
amazing.
is. There she is.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Joe, have a great night.
Elizabeth.
Be safe.
Hello
Yes,
all.
Xavier.
What
You
a
stay
great
healthy.
reading. What a great reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies, you were wonderful, very inspiring. I'm about to
Thank
go and grab my journal right now and start writing some
Yes.
Yes. Tag us.
Bye.
things. Bye, Joanne. I love you.
Bye,
Bye.
Lizette.
Love you,
I love
Lisa.
it.
Bye.
That's for sure. Oh, look, there are the children. I love it. It's great. Eileen. Oh, okay. Oh, it's
Thanks,
up to
Joanne. Brilliant poem. An epic poem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Eileen,
you.
lovely to see you.
Lovely to
Thank
see
you,
you,
Joanne.
Eileen.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
Eileen,
you.
Aileen, everybody.
Hi, good to
Eileen, hello.
Hello. I don't want to end
Eileen.
see you
That's
both.
it. I know. Well, we'll be having another event to celebrate Grace Schulman's book, The Marble Bed. So that'll be exciting.
oh, can't wait.
We'll gather again. Everybody, feed this to your babies. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you, Libby. So good to see you all.